I'm not the first person to talk about the question of suffering, and I won't be the last. And I guess every person you ask will answer this question in a different way. So this is mine, I'm sharing with you, and feel free to have a conversation with me afterwards. But I'm often asked, couldn't God create a world without suffering? Why does God allow people like Hitler or Stalin? Why does he allow injustice and abuse? Why does he even allow the destructive aspects of human nature within me as well as within you? Why does he allow dangerous creatures and even the predator-prey relationship? What about disability and disease, natural catastrophes, and a world where energy is sustained by death? These are live questions for many, many people. I wonder if any of you have heard of the concept of entropy. Is that a familiar term to everybody? It was not a term I was taught at school. I came across it after school and I did wonder why we didn't deal with it. But anyway, the definition of entropy is the measure of disorder and the natural tendency of isolated systems to break down into randomness and uncertainty. We experience it every day. So, for example, if you buy an ice cream and you don't eat it, you know it's going to do what? It's going to melt. As the ice cream is heated up by the atmosphere, it will equalise in temperature with the atmosphere around it. When you heat your home and you turn the heater off, what's going to happen? It's going to get cold. You know this. This is how we experience entropy. As the heat from the house leaches out and tries to heat up the rest of the world. So we experience it as energy loss. We experience it as inefficiency. So the law of momentum tells us that if I'm in a car and I'm travelling at a certain speed and I disengage the gear and just let it coast, it will continue at the same speed in the same direction. But does it? No, eventually it will slow down to a stop. And all machines suffer from this inefficiency. This again is a form of entropy. And then wear and tear. Your car tyres will wear out over time. You know that machines break down eventually. Machines that are built to do a certain job, they will do it, and they will do it, and they will do it, and then eventually something will go wrong. It will stop. We might experience injury through accidents or overexertion. And ultimately, our bodies age, they become less efficient at the job they were built to do, and they die. These are all expressions of entropy. And I look at that fact and the fact that entropy is built into the whole of life and the mechanism of the world. And the big question for me isn't so much why is there suffering, it's why is there life? Because if we look at the world as a mechanical system, as a physical system, suffering is almost inherent in it. Why is there life? Now, I must say, although I've quoted lots of things we don't like about entropy, entropy is an essential part of life as well. So, for example, are you familiar with the term osmosis? Now, osmosis is a biological mechanism that takes place in all of our bodies. It's essential to life, and it occurs because of entropy, because of this idea that something that's concentrated will try to spread out. That's the driving force of osmosis. Our bodies import what's described as low entropy foods, so foods that have energy and they have order. And they use that to sustain themselves, and they eject high entropy waste, the things that would cause our bodies to decay. And in doing that, they decrease the entropy within our system and increase the order that exists within our bodies. Of course, when our bodies cease to do that, that's when we run into problems and we have disease and we eventually die. And science will tell us that the universe is marching towards what is known as heat death. Has anybody heard that term? Heat death is the concept that when energy spreads out enough and matter spreads out enough, basically you have a universe which is entirely uniform. There is no variation within it whatsoever. And when that happens, life and existence as we know it ceases to be. Thankfully, we're talking about billions of years away, not tomorrow. But that's where the universe is going because of this force we know as entropy. So this week I made a rather interesting discovery. I heard of a man, a physicist by the name of Jeremy England. Has anybody heard of Jeremy England? He's actually also an ordained rabbi, and apparently he appears in one of Dan Brown's books. I think it's called Origins. And Dan Brown ascribes to Jeremy England as being the man who finally disproved God. Now, Jeremy England, as a Jewish rabbi, is not very happy about that reference, but there you go. That's another story. What Jeremy England does is he describes the way that entropy helps our world work. And he talks about the way that life is a physical manifestation of matter responding to an external drive. So as an example, think about filling a sink with water. Right? You fill your sink with water and you leave it alone. It's subject to gravity, so it pulls it down into the sink and it just sits there. After the initial energy of the water going into the tap and stirring around, whatever it does, it will just sit there. But then imagine that you reach into the sink and you pull out the plug. What happens? We get a whirlpool formed, don't we? There's a picture of life. So the reaching into the sink and pulling out the plug makes a change in the system. There's the energy, the drive being inputted to it. And then the entropy is what pulls it down. But there is an order which is established and we see it as that whirlpool, that temporary order. There is a picture of life. So he talks about the system, which is us, and then the external drive that acts on it. And between the entropy of the system itself and the external drive, we have life. Now, one of the other things that he says is that over time, a system will respond to this entropy and this drive. And he uses this term, dissipative adaptation. So we as a system respond to the drive that is applied to the system and it molds us in certain ways. So an example of that is the immune system. So imagine the immune system in our body, it gets affected by a virus. What happens? The virus attacks the body. What does the body do? Antibodies, yeah. And what do the antibodies do? Attack the virus and clear it out. It means that the next time that virus comes along, it's no longer affected in the same way by the virus. Here is this dissipative adaptation. So the body is built, the physical system is built in such a way as to respond to the energy that flows into it. And it uses that energy and also entropy to change its shape and change its nature so it's able to respond to a new set of circumstances, a new energy flow. I also learnt how weight training works this week. Does anybody know how you build muscle in weight training? They call it micro tears. As you lift a weight that causes a strain on your muscles, what happens in your muscles is your muscles actually tear in small places. And then your body, what's its response? Its response is to take the food, the protein in particular that is fed into it, to repair the tear. But the body rebuilds in a more robust way, so it can actually start to lift that weight more efficiently and more easily than it could before. And that's why your muscles bulk up as you do weightlifting. So isn't that interesting? A process which injures the body causes it to grow stronger. Now, Jeremiah's visit to the house of the potter talks a little bit about this idea of Jeremy England's. So you have the clay on the potter's wheel moulded by the spinning wheel, and it's moulded by the hand of the potter. It's responding to the pressures that are applied to it to create a shape. This is what's going on within all of us, and it's what's going on within our world as the drive is applied to the system that it's working on. However, of course, once the pot is fired, if I were to drop it, which I'm not going to try to do, just so you know, we know it's going to smash, isn't it? Because the pot has assumed a shape and it has got set in that shape so that were energy to meet this pot in a way that it does not expect, instead of reforming, it shatters. It's a very different outcome, isn't it? So whenever any system, like us, experiences a form of energy, it responds to that energy and it forms into a shape. When it gets used to that energy, it's very easy for us to become set such that when a change of energetic input comes in, we can't cope. Jeremy England calls that a brittle structure. There's some strength to it. It's able to withstand a certain amount of energy or type of energy, but if you apply it in a different way, it shatters, it breaks. So Swedenborg's model of theology is very similar to this. He says we are the system that receives the energy. He talks about divine influx, the Lord's energy that flows into us and sustains our lives. He talks about suffering, and Jeremy England's term is rattling and shattering, which is misalignment with the energy that flows into us, which causes spiritual friction. And then I think of passages in the Word like Jesus says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." There's an expression of the inflowing energy that if we're following a certain way of life, we're more pliable, we're more able to respond to that life. But if we're not robust and pliable, life, and sometimes suffering, reshapes us until we are. Now I want then to talk about the story of Job, because Job is often wheeled out when we talk about suffering. Each of the characters in the story of Job is a personification of what we've just talked about. So Job is the system that's being worked on. I see God as a personification of the drive, the energy that's flowing into the system, and Satan is the energy of entropy, of the natural world, of settling down into certain patterns. And Job, in his little world, as it's described, is when we get stuck in our patterns and life is easy and it's straightforward and we know what we think we need to do and we just keep doing it, irrespective of what else happens. And Job's life shatters. But as we read through to the end of the book, it's also a story of hope because Job's life is rebuilt. And so he's able to reform a life and come to a new understanding. Now, if we get tied up with the person of Job and the fact that his children have died and his riches have been taken away and all those sort of natural aspects of the story, it seems terribly unfair, poor old Job. But if we think of it as representing something within our lives, it makes much more sense to us. And the thing I realise about all of that is it's true of organisations too. I don't know how you feel about life as the Bucknell Family Trust and all the things that go on here. I know certainly within the context of the church, life at the moment is very challenging. Life as we live it in the world is very different from what it was even 5-10 years ago. So there we have that pot on the wheel, if you like, or the system which responds to life. The church has, for so long, been used to a particular flow of energy. For hundreds of years, the church has been the cornerstone or the pillar of society, and it no longer is. But it's still acting in ways as though it is still that pillar, that cornerstone. And so what's happening? Because the drive has changed, the inflowing life has changed, well, the church is shattering. And I think it's true of many community organisations as well. We are busy coping with the fact that young people aren't interested in doing the same things as old people are. The old people want to keep doing what they're doing and wondering, why aren't the young people here? Because the young people are interested in other things. They have other concerns, other things going on for them. Life, the energy that's flowing in, has changed. And if we don't respond to it, what happens? We shatter. Jeremy England calls that the kinetic trap. The kinetic trap, to fall into one pattern of behaviour that you think will suit you for the rest of your life. And I think it's one we have to watch out for. When Swedenborg looks at the Bible and he sees all of those images of judgment, that's what he sees. He sees a spirituality that has got so stuck in its ways, it's unable to move on to anything new. It's become brittle and rigid. So apply that energy, that drive, in a slightly different way, and it can't cope. It falls apart. So that's the old structure. The judgment is the energy flowing in a different way. And what he calls us to is a state that's able to respond to that new flow of energy. And it's a challenge we all face in many organisations and individually as well. So I just want to offer you one other thing that I came across over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, the work of a man called Dr. Adam Fraser. And he talks about a thing he calls the third space. It's the ability to transition from one mode of life, work, to another mode of life, like home. He talks about a man who would come home from work stressed out of his mind, would walk in the front door and get really cross and angry with his kids because he's still in that emotional state, that stress associated with work. He said this guy worked it out one day. He parked the car, he went to the front door, and as he opened the door, he could see his kids scatter. They knew what was coming when Dad arrives home. So what this guy did, apparently, he had the money for it, he built himself his own door into the house. He had his garage and his master bedroom next door. He just knocked a door through. So he went in, parked the car in the garage, went through the internal door into the master bedroom, had a shower, changed his clothes, and came out ready to live life as Dad. And it changed his world. What Adam Fraser recommends is a 3-stage process. As you leave one arena of life, reflect. What are the lessons you've learned? What have you gained from the joys, the stresses, whatever they are, of where you've been? Second, rest. Find that space to breathe. And third, reset. Prepare for what's coming. So here's a really interesting way to respond to the changes of energy in life that we all experience. Reflect, rest, reset. And for me, this is the truest part of what church is all about. It's allowing us space to do exactly that. Put aside all the stuff that's going on out there. Just have time to reflect on all of those messages and things that we've learned. Rest and reset for what's coming.